title's a bit of a mouthful. I come from academia. I only kind of apologize. Surprise if no one has figured it out from the logo yet. The desktop community I'm talking about is Ubuntu. But really, it's not just the desktop Ubuntu that I care about. It's the server, it's everything adjacent, it's all of Linux, so it's involved. All right, so to start with, introduction and some background on me. And this is relevant because it kind of sets the framework for how we've been working on what we're doing. So I did a data science PhD from University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I did my research at ORNL while I was doing that. I was in a computational biology group, did a lot of work on Summit, and belatedly realized that through that process, I was a very spoiled end user. I had big established clusters to work on. I had the entire OLCF support staff to work on it to help me with various things like accidentally creating 20,000 directories. So there was a lot of work that was done there, and I really did enjoy all of that, but I didn't really appreciate what I had access to until I kind of had moved away from that and started working in other places. After that, I was a data manager for a research group at UNC Chapel Hill. This was very much the back end side of things. Instead of being an end user, I was kind of now somewhere between an admin and an glorified user. I was kind of liaison between the two. And there was a lot of differences in what we had as far as resources there than what I had access to at ORNL. And I knew that going in, but really digging into it and realizing just how different things were, even between two places, was really surprising. It was very heterogeneous resources compared to the big monolithic system I had worked on prior. There was significantly less oversight across the system, so they were very piecemeal. One cluster was ran within the research community, one was ran across UNC. They were completely different groups doing it, those sorts of things. And there was kind of an expectation that a lot of the setup was kind of being done in-house. So I was helping my own research group, but a different group down the hallway was doing something completely different. And if they needed help with something, good luck. I don't know what your setup is. And so that kind of, these aspects kind of informed my experiences on how different communities and different people within the same community do things. From that, I moved on, and I am now a technical author at Canonical. I'm not going to go really into everything that's involved in that field because it's not quite relevant, but basically I am embedded in an engineering team in the HPC, Charmed HPC engineering team, which is quite new. I attend daily stand-ups. I go through the specs. We talk about design. I don't just write documentation. I actually write very little documentation. What I'm mostly focusing on is making sure my engineers are thinking about documentation and thinking about the user experience. And in that case, I don't just mean user as an end user like I was at ORNL. I mean user as in anyone who's going to be using or working with our software. And like I said, these kind of have broadly all influenced how I work and what I think about and what I focus on, for the good and the bad. So, an Ubuntu HPC community, why? Why do we want this? Is it really something that Canonical Ubuntu have pushed for, pursued in the past? I could make a joke about it being the year of Linux desktop, whatever. But really, there's a variety of reasons, and I think some of these are going to be more obvious than others. And a lot of the time, we're talking to other people within the Ubuntu community, so we're trying to convince them why HPC is useful, but I probably don't need to spell that out to you guys. The parts here that are really important to me are that Ubuntu has a really active open source community. It's very vocal, it's very up in your face whether you want it or not. And it's also a very familiar environment. It's one of the easiest environments for students to get into when they're still in school. It's something that they're going to be familiar with when they're moving on out of that system. They're going to go poke on it when they're looking at different containers on AWS. So it's nice to have it around. And then, of course, HPC has all of these pieces that we kind of want to bring into Ubuntu from the other side. And I don't mean Ubuntu as in the product. I mean Ubuntu as in the community, the Canonical, the whole Linux community. We are really a well-established field. We've been around for such a long time. And of course, then there's the actual peculiarities with how we think about software, the parallel processing expertise that is inherent to how we think about things, and the performance optimization that comes with that. That isn't always the top of everyone's mind when they're not thinking about it to the distinctions that we do. From that, there's also what I would consider the 3 types of users that we're thinking about, and this is a little bit complicated. There is more than these 3, but these are kind of the 3 different types of people that we're thinking about. And so we've got our end users. That's, you know, that was me, the spoiled end user. We've got the sysadmins and the managers, and those that kind of live in the middle, the OLCFs and those sorts of people. And then we have the software developers, the you guys, and my team, and everyone who's kind of building things that are supposed to work on or with or for these HPC systems. But then, of course, there's the Ubuntu side of this. There's that aspect of it, and there's the HPC. So if you think about it, that's almost 6 different types of people that we're trying to kind of pull into this community that we're trying to build. And we're greedy. We want to reach all of them. We don't just want one piece of that pie. We want to really get the input from everyone. So now I'm going to actually get into the part that's hopefully interesting. These are some of our wins, and I'm not going to say our failures. They're just our works in progress, areas where we can definitely get further. And like I mentioned earlier, we are a very young team, so we've only been around as a project for a few years. I've only been there for a year and a half. We haven't even released our project. It's open source, so it exists online, but it's not, you know, we're not at like a 1.0 or anything. So we're getting there. So to start with, one of the things that we really wanted to focus on early was open communication in the sense of being accessible, being interactive, being around for people to actually get a hold of us if they want to. We don't want to look like some corporate monolith that no one wants to interact with. So we've done a lot of work on setting up a GitHub organization for ourselves that is dependent from the Ubuntu organization, which exists separately. Making sure we have a useful homepage with all the links and the whatever. And we have weekly community calls that we run through Jitsi, which is open. You don't need to have an account to access it, which is something, so it's very easy for someone to drop in without having to create all of the pieces for it. And we have a Matrix server that is very actively monitored, that we keep up with regularly. However, our community calls don't really draw on a whole lot of people at the moment. We have maybe 1 or 2 consistent community members, and they're people that we've pulled in from the existing Ubuntu community. So we want to get more from the HPC side. And then Matrix and GitHub, they're pretty quiet right now. I mean, we're young, we get it. Some of this is just going to take time to grow, but it is quiet. So what have we kind of been doing to kind of work on that? A big part has just been getting the word out, letting people know that we exist as a community and we want people to come join us. And one of the ways that we've been doing that is in scaling our visibility. So going to different conferences like this one, talking to people, letting other people know that we exist, and also getting feedback, which is one of the main reasons I wanted to come here. Not because I wanted to tell you guys about us, but I wanted to hear what you were doing so I could start seeing how that could potentially be beneficial for us. And we've also gotten into social media a little bit, finally. This is very new. We actually started our own LinkedIn page like 2-3 weeks ago. So we're growing our social presence. We're starting to share updates and conferences. We're a small team, but and we have a small number of connections. But it's already growing, and I've been really happy to see how quickly that's taken off. So I'm hoping that this is of use. I don't social media much, so we'll see. And from there, we're trying to start thinking about what we can do to kind of get people interested in what we're doing. So a big one, and this is one that I've spent a lot of personal effort on, and I'm really happy with where we've gotten, is starting to lower the barrier of entry. Trying to invite the curiosity, oh, I want to poke at that, I want to play with that, let me see what I can do there, which is not easy to do with a lot of things HPC, right? There's kind of some inherent aspects of it that tend to make it harder to get into. So this one is a tutorial. And okay, sure, this is your documentation, you're talking about tutorial. The big thing about this that I'm really proud of is this tutorial is for our HPC project, can be ran on a laptop, and it is operating system agnostic. That is a pretty big deal for me because that means that your student that's still an undergrad and the sysadmin who's trying to learn about a new system to see if they want to switch can both run the same thing. It does have some bulky resources. It is still HPC, but it is bulky laptopable. And this is something that we really wanted an easy, solid ground for everyone to stand on, especially for those that are potentially new to the HPC field in all senses, those that are coming from the Ubuntu side of things, but are potentially interested in contributing down the line. Building this tutorial was not easy, and so I just cut out the few pieces that are interesting for this, but I mean, this is pages of stuff. This took a lot of discussion amongst my team, scrapping work that we had done. Originally, it was going to be on the cloud, and we decided that that was going to be too involved, and it took a lot of work, but it was something that we really wanted to make sure we got up and running, and we also acknowledged that it's good for right now, but that doesn't mean it needs to be that way forever. We can change it if we decide that there's something else that's worked better. And we have had multiple people tell us that they have followed through on this. They've gone through the tutorial, they liked it, they enjoyed it. It helped them understand what we're doing, and that they're happy to see where we're going from here, which has been great. And from there, we're starting to try to invite contributions, invitations to contribute and to interact, and trying to build on some of the early interests that we were able to get with some of the tutorial. Yes, I'm going to show more documentation. I'll hop through these quickly. So this is an area where I kind of draw on from my past experiences. Contributing always felt very cloudy. It wasn't obvious how you go about that, what the expectations are. Do they even want something from me? Are they only expecting issues? Can I contribute something bigger than that? So we wanted to make sure that it was really well laid out what our expectations are from a maintainer's standpoint, and also to show that we really are happy for these kinds of contributions. It's not an imposition on us. We're absolutely happy for interest. And we also have both contributing to code, but also contributing to documentation, which obviously my area, but we have seen that people that are interested in contributing to documentation and are able to kind of start poking at things and just, oh, I'm gonna do a quick little fix and a typo here and whatever, are more interested in sticking around and coming back because they've kind of started to invest already. And they're more willing to stick it out, which has been great. However, we realized that while we have a lot of great guidelines for how to contribute, we didn't really have a lot on what types of contributions would actually be useful. So this is one of the areas that we're going to be focusing on more, but all of these guidelines and this information and the tutorials and whatever, it kind of leaves you hanging on what's the next thing. And that's where we are right now. We have more to do, we're not done. But we're getting there, I think, is the way that I'm happy with it. And we're really looking forward to digging into the areas that can use more work. So we're going to be working with CODA, which is a shameless plug. It is the Open Documentation Academy through Canonical. It is open, it's Canonical hosted, it's not our projects. It's open to anyone, you can bring your projects, you can bring your work. And we have weekly meetings, and it's open for suggestions, for talks, for whatever. And I would highly suggest looking into it if you're interested in anything in that regard. Actually, even more so if you aren't interested in documentation, because I think it could help. We're planning on revitalizing our community calls. We're going to start doing some more demos, start doing some like hot topic things, spreading the word on LinkedIn before we do them, those sorts of things. Also, one of the things we're planning on doing soon is setting up some documentation on how to go from a laptop tutorial to a production environment. Because, okay, sure, we can do this little tutorial. How does that actually get me something that's relevant? And while our how-tos cover that, a tutorial that can kind of bridge that process is good. And then Charmed HPC, which is our project, eventually, hopefully within the next few months, we'll actually have a 1.0 release, which hopefully will help some of this. But we are open to feedback, really, and that's my call to action here. We welcome any and all feedback and suggestions. Please let us know what you think we could be doing better. The communities that I've seen here are significantly more established than us and have had and gone through a lot of the growing pains that we could really, really appreciate the advice from as we get going on this. And we want to keep giving back. I would be absolutely happy to come back to this next year and keep continuing to come back because this is an area that I am happy to be part of, and I think our whole project would be. This is the rest of my team. Like I said, we're really small. Our engineering manager is actually the engineering manager for the entire infrastructure area. He's a director. My team is my 3 engineers and myself. We are very small, but we are making progress, and we'd be happy to hear from anyone. So I do have little QR codes for myself and for our project. Also, if you're interested in talking to me about documentation in general, if you have questions about something else, I'm happy to talk docs, I'm happy to talk community, I'm happy to talk any of it. So feel free to reach out. And with that, thank you, and questions.
I can open us up for questions. So you had a slide on like some of the documentation you had written in like the tutorials, and I'm wondering, if you have either used AI to like help you create that, or if even you've used AI to help you critique it and then make it better for like, imagine I was a new user who hadn't seen XYZ before, would someone like that be able to use this tutorial? AI, give me an answer, right?
Yeah, so we've been pretty adamant about making our documentation, we're writing for people. We're not writing for some LLM to scoop up our docs. If that happens on the side, sure, great. However, we do want to make sure that our stuff is ingestible, and something that I'm actually planning on working on soon is starting to look at what the documentation team can do to start developing our skill.md files for these various products. We already produce Terraform files to go along with various infrastructure pieces, so we're already providing code to go along with the docs. And I think that's something that we could potentially be adding alongside those as well. And as a documentation team, we already spend a lot of thought in making sure something is well written and well scoped, so we would probably be a good place to do that. And I don't just mean in HPC, I mean across the board at Canonical and beyond. Outside of that, we have actually started using AI to help us with documentation in a way of more thinking about, okay, do these phrasings make sense? Do we have inconsistencies across our docs? Does this lingo make sense for someone who English isn't their first language, or they're coming from a different community, or those sorts of things? So those have actually been extremely useful, especially because I can check everything before it makes it into the actual docs, which is the big catch for that. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Samir Shinde from the University of Oregon, and I work on HPSF's E4S project, which is an ecosystem for science for HPC and AI applications. And we have created, based on the SPAC package manager, we have created distributions for E4S. These are available for bare metal install with Ubuntu 24.04, as well as containers for Ubuntu 24.04, and we target x86 64, AART 64, as well as PPC 64LE, all with Ubuntu and packaged with support for GPUs from NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel for all the different models for these GPUs. And we have over 100 different HPC and AI packages targeting Ubuntu, and it's also available on the cloud platforms, AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, and IBM Cloud, with Ubuntu, with Slurm integration, with remote desktops, GPU accelerated desktops. So we've solved a lot of those problems. And AI and HPC packages are all pre-installed in a multi-user environment where each user can configure their software stack. So with this, how could we collaborate with Canonical?
Yeah, I mean, definitely reach out to us. We would be happy to talk to you. I'm happy to talk to you when we're done here, because we're like I said, we're in early stages. We have a lot of area that we would be happy to collaborate with, because there's no way our team of 3.5 can do all of these things on our own. And what we can actually do there, I'm not sure, but I would be absolutely ecstatic to talk to you about it and see if we can come to some broader conversations and collaborations, because I think that would be great. We'd be ecstatic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you for the talk and for coming to this conference. I think this is super exciting that you're trying to get into this space. Like a lot of grad students I know, their first experience using GNU Linux was with Ubuntu. A lot of like lab servers or smaller clusters, I think all of them exclusively have run Ubuntu that I've seen. So I think this is kind of like, very much like a good space to be in. So I guess a couple of questions. or maybe a little bit slightly more commenty. So I think a lot of obstacles for wanting to use Ubuntu as a base operating system sort of come down to hardware and vendor certification. So I know Ubuntu's have Ubuntu certified laptops, right? But I used to work for as a sysadmin for a smaller cluster, and if something goes really wrong, you kind of need the vendor to come in and sort of troubleshoot, and you have to have the entire system, right, supported, and the vendor, being interested in wanting to come in and troubleshoot that. So I don't know if the hardware component is a part of this project, or
not directly, but there are teams at Canonical that work with a lot of the vendors, and we do liaise with them pretty frequently. So I know we're in talks with NVIDIA to making sure we have drivers and those sorts of things. So while our team doesn't have a lot of the direct connections with the various vendors, we do as a company work with them plenty. So it is something that we're keeping in mind, that those are definitely relationships that would need to be maintained in perpetuity, really, for this to be a viable option. We already work with things like AWS and GCP all the time. So yeah, it's definitely on our radar.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So vendors and turnkey systems, I think, would help.
Yeah.
So I guess since we are a very nerdy technical audience, I was wondering if you could go a little bit more into, charmed HPC or any,
Yeah. Well, so if you go to the little Atom link, that's our GitHub homepage, which also links to the documentation, which is all public. That's already out. And we are a workload manager system so far. That's kind of where we're starting. So it's a system that will work around Slurm to kind of make a lot more of the setup of those sorts of pieces a lot more turnkey. It does work on Ubuntu, so there's that sort of expectation, but it'll integrate with the file systems. We've just set up the integrations for LDAP, and I'm going to be honest, as not one of the engineers, I'm probably not the best person to espouse all of the great things about it. But yeah, that's where we're starting day one operations, but we are going to be moving more into day two operations. We have a lot of observability stacks pieces that we're working on. We're wanting to make sure that we can integrate with the rest of the Charm ecosystem that Ubuntu provides, which has a lot of various options. And we're also doing a lot of work on making sure that these pieces run on the various clouds. So we've done tests to make sure that we can work on Azure, it works on GCP, it works on AWS. So being able to set up and tear down HPC systems on the fly is not something we often think about, but that's an area we're really trying to push thought into, because it's an area that is not nearly as well developed, but could be extremely useful, especially as hardware keeps changing as quickly as it does. If we can start relying on the cloud resources that are already doing some of that instead of building our little monoliths, that could be really useful. So not as technical probably as you want. There's a lot more technical details out there, and you're welcome to come to community calls or reach out on Matrix or anything, and my engineers can answer more of those questions.
Yeah. No, that was actually very good background.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for the talk. I'm from the Chapel programming language team, and just recently in the last few years, we've really been trying to work actively in our community, and I feel like the challenges that you described and the place where you seem to be at is very similar to ours. And so I was wondering, you're talking about a social media presence and documentation, right? Kind of sometimes using these sorts of things, it feels like you're talking into the void,
Yes.
You've written all this great material, and we've in particular spent time writing specifications, tutorials, making video recordings and things like that. But it's completely unclear whether people are actually engaging with them as often as we'd like. And also I was wondering if you had any ways of kind of pulling people in as opposed to just posting it on the wall somewhere and hoping that someone will find it and read about it.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be here, both to get the word out on our community, but also to see what other communities have been doing, because that's one of the areas that I don't have any prior experience. It's solely been on my personal experiences in this, which is relatively minimal. And the rest of the Ubuntu, there aren't actually a lot of Ubuntu communities that focus on a specific other area. There's just Ubuntu, and we don't, that already exists. We want to do our own thing, right? So yeah, we're still figuring it out is honestly the best answer I can give you. But yes, I very much agree with the feeling like we're yelling into the void sort of thing, and how can we start actually getting some of that feedback back? We have recently set up Google Analytics for our docs, so we can at least see how many people are looking at it, but that's such a minor way of telling what people are doing, right? So yeah, we'll see.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So one intersection, I think, with generally, Canonical and whatnot, is that we've been recently starting to think much more seriously about packaging, right? And how to have our offerings being part of, the standard packaging mechanisms of OSs, for example, right? Mm-hmm. And we actually, as HPSF, right, we recently created a binary and packaging working group, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. And there is certainly quite a bit of challenges where I think, actual collaboration and some participation also from OS representatives might be worthwhile. HPC in particular has some, I would say, particular challenges. Like one of them is, how do you package things if all your binaries are GPU specific, right? And you have 20 different GPU architectures you need to support, right? Mm-hmm. What's the mechanism to do that? And I think that's something, if there are resources on your side or people who might be interested in talking at least, right? Where participation in our packaging working group, or at least occasionally, or maybe for explicit topics, might be really worthwhile. So if that's something you guys are interested in, that would
definitely.
be great.
Yeah, I sat in on the some of those talks earlier today. That is something that some of the engineers on my team have some experience with, and then there are other people at Canonical who that is their whole job. So I'll both reach out to my team as well as start putting out some leads into some other teams and seeing if we can start get a bigger footprint into this, because I think this is a really, I might be biased, but I think HPC is a really great area for us to be getting into, and I really want to start getting there, really.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's thank our speaker one more time.
Thank you.